It is 8:16 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. It is the 8th day of the 8th month of 2025, and this is episode 1143 of Bitcoin, and the Comfrey Owner's Manual is just about to be dropped. I'm going to do that on my website, which is at bitcoinandshow.com. That's bitcoinandshow.com. What, you may ask, is the Comfrey Owner's Manual? Well, if you've ever heard Comfrey being mentioned before, but still don't know what it is, never planted it, well, this manual was made for you. It's a pretty simple, it's beginner friendly, and it's like an owner's manual. If you get a car, it comes with an owner's manual. It tells you what, like, how to change a tire, how to change your oil, that kind of stuff. I kind of designed it to be like that, except it's about comfrey. So it explains what comfrey is, and by the way, it's a plant that you're going to want in your garden or on your property, because it does all kinds of neat stuff. And this manual tells you what all that neat stuff is. It tells you where to get your comfrey from. I've got a couple of sources. It's step-by-step planting and care and how to harvest it, because it is quite prolific and you're going to want it because it can be a mulch. It brings minerals from deep within the soil and brings it up to the surface so that it's a fertilizer. You can make liquid fertilizers. I tell you how to do that. I tell you what you need. What else? How to scale it up. How you can make more comfrey plants from the comfrey that you already have. It's non-invasive, but it is permanent, right? So wherever you plant it, that's where it's going to stay forever and ever and ever, because this thing doesn't really have any natural predators. I've never seen one get sick with a disease. I've never seen one get mold or powdery mildew. It's like indestructible, and it becomes drought tolerant because its roots go deep into the soil. We're talking like anywhere between 6 feet and 10 feet when that plant is fully mature, which means it's tapping into moisture. Moisture. What am I trying to say? Good Lord. I'm sorry, guys. My brain is, for whatever reason, just like fogged up this morning. But it taps into sources of moisture that are so deep in the soil that it's always there. Because when you get 10 feet into the soil, I'm sorry, dude, it's going to find moisture, even in drought times, which makes this plant drought tolerant. So I will be announcing this probably early next week. I've got to finalize something with one of my vendors as to how you're going to be able to get this comfrey. But the Comfrey Owner's Manual will be dropping soon. So now that that's out of the way, we can get on with the rest of the story as to why you're here. And that is so that you don't have to scroll through 15 different news sources to find out what the hell's going on with Bitcoin today. That's what Bitcoin And brings you. I do the work. You can listen while you're driving to work or doing dishes or cleaning up around the house, something that you need both your hands for. I'm going to read you the news, maybe make a joke or two. Let's get on with it. Can Bitchat build a free internet with Bitcoin? Dave Birnbaum writing this one from Forbes. Jack Dorsey has spent the last decade searching for ways to strip intermediaries out of communications and finance. He has maintained that Twitter would have been better conceived as a protocol than an app. Since then, he has supported the development of Nostr, an open source, permissionless, and censorship-resistant social network. Now, he and a team of collaborators have developed Bitchat, a Bluetooth-only messaging app that quietly appeared in the Apple App Store earlier this month, and the software knits phones that are within close range of each other into a low-energy mesh network so that text can hop from one device to another device without ever touching a cell tower a router, or remote server. It works like an offline version of Signal, and that alone would be newsworthy, but the real breakthrough emerges when Bitchat pairs its mesh with eCash, a recently resurrected concept that would allow Bitcoin to be transmitted from phone to phone in the same way. Bluetooth itself was not designed for payments, but by combining it with Bitchat and eCash, an offline digital bearer instrument can be created. A Bitcoin developer known as Kali, best known for Cashew, an open source implementation of eCash, recently filmed two phones beaming Satoshis back and forth over a Bitchat mesh network. No internet connection was required for this transaction to take place. Later, the eCash tokens can be finally settled when they are converted to on-chain Bitcoin. eCash dates from David Chaum's 1982 paper on blind signatures, which is a cryptographic primitive that lets a bank vouch for a coin without learning who spends it. It was a solution to maintaining the privacy of cash while solving the double spending problem of digital money. David Chaum launched the idea commercially in the 1990s, but it had failed to achieve traction. Bitcoin solved the double spending problem with a global ledger that is independently verified by all nodes on the network. However, to achieve this, Satoshi's solution traded off of the speed and privacy offered by physical cash. Chaumy and eCash grafted onto Bitcoin reserves that reverses that trade-off. An eCash mint handles double spend detection, while users regain instant local finality along with the option to collapse the token back into money whenever connectivity to the internet returns. So many who hear about Chaumy and eCash for the first time might assume it must be an altcoin because the tokens circulate outside of the public Bitcoin ledger. In fact, every token is a bearer claim on real Bitcoin held inside a mint that offers one-for-one redemption. The mint cannot create more claims than the Bitcoin it controls, so the eCash tokens inherit Bitcoin's fixed 21 million supply. Everything in digital money is a trade-off. By providing speed, eCash introduces counterparty risk at the layer of the mint. In other words, eCash trades off self-custody of the underlying coins in order to gain the ability to move a digital bearer token instantly. Bitchat shows that this can be done without devices ever touching the internet. To further illustrate how eCash differs from Bitcoin, we can draw upon the distinction between clearing and settlement in conventional finance. Clearing is the provisional accounting step that records who owns what, while settlement is the latter, irreversible transfer of reserves. One payment network called the Clearinghouse Interbank Payment System, or CHIPS, clears dollar wires, like when you wire dollars, during the business day. Another payment network, FedWire, settles the net positions at the Federal Reserve. Ownership can change during clearing, but finality arrives only with settlement. Bitchat's Bluetooth mesh plays the role of chips. When two phones trade an eCash token offline, the sender relinquishes the claim and the receiver can immediately spend it again. The local ledger has now cleared. True settlement happens only when the current holder reconnects to the internet and redeems that note with the mint, which then burns the token and pushes the corresponding Bitcoin onto the base layer of the network, Bitcoin's time chain. Wow, I gotta pause. Well done, Forbes, for actually not using the term blockchain. Bitcoin's time chain is the term used here, which is indeed the correct terminology. But continuing, until that redemption, the payment is cleared, but not settled. Once the mint writes to the time chain, it enjoys the same global, irreversible finality as any on-chain transfer. The Bitchat plus eCash model widens Bitcoin's surface area without tampering with its monetary policy, showing that hard money can be used in contexts where payment speed is important and internet connectivity may or may not be available. All the while, the eCash tokens used for payment are bearer instruments that remain anchored to an incorruptible base. To get there, Mint implementations need rigorous reputation management features and proof of reserves functionality so that users can understand how much counterparty risk is introduced by that particular mint. The end user app itself must present eCash payments in a familiar interface, turning eCash payments and Bitcoin redemptions into ordinary taps and swipes. If the user experience of this technology can be developed to the degree that it can be readily used by non-experts, it could do for payments what nostr aims to do for speech: extend the reach of permissionless systems all the way to the physical edges of daily life. So we talk about Bitchat, and if you don't know what Bitchat is, hopefully that was sort of at least a primer for you to understand kind of what's going on. But think of it this way. I'm at a protest, and I get facially scanned by some camera on the street. It is a protest that the government of the country that I'm in really doesn't like and understands immediately from my facial scan that I am a resident of that country. They call central bank calls all the other banks, and they find the bank that I have banking access to, and they shut it down. Doesn't really matter, because now I can use Bitcoin. So let me back up just a little bit. Let's say that I'm at this protest and I want to give $20 to one of the other protesters because they've got to, I don't know, go do whatever protesters do, buy a sign to walk around with, and maybe things will change. Doesn't really matter. If I've lost access to the bank because a camera saw my face and then my face was used to identify who I was, yada, 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 all of a sudden I get my bank closed down. I'm not going to be able to Venmo my buddy protester over here, right? That my bank is shut down. Venmo's going to go, dude, as far as we're concerned, you don't have a bank account. So there's nothing there. Now let's say, but I have Bitcoin and I have Bitchat and I have eCash. Well, now I can just give this protester, who maybe was smarter and, wore like a full face hood or something and keep their identity out of prying eyes, they're able to take that eCash payment that I give them from my phone without ever touching the internet. And then maybe they, I don't know, go to a coffee shop that has internet access, redeems that money, is able to cash that money out into fiat to do, because they've got to go buy a sign at the fiat protest sign store, and then they're able to actually complete whatever it is that they need to do. If I was solely reliant upon a bank that was able to get a phone call from somebody that's telling them to shut my shit down, well, that entire transaction won't happen. Now, it's going to take your imagination to figure out different scenarios that actually make sense to you, because maybe you're somebody who's like going, dude, I would never actually end up at a protest. Okay. I get that. I totally understand that. That's why I'm saying, what in your imagination what sparks your imagination when we talk about the ability to send money and informational messages to another person that is in your proximity? Okay, that's a key thing here. In your proximity, without a cell tower or Wi-Fi or any sort of internet access whatsoever. I think it won't take very long for you to figure that one out. But Bitchat is just a little bit more. If there's like 10,000 people in a crowd, Bluetooth only travels about 150 feet. Right? Let's just somewhere around there. It runs out of juice pretty fast. But if I've got Bitchat and a whole bunch of other people in that 10,000 people has got Bitchat, that message is going to go to the person that I sent it to by bouncing off of these different phones but each holder of the phones that's being used as a proxy to bounce my message will never know that that message actually went through their phone. They can't read it. They can't see it. They don't have the encryption keys. Only me and the other guy, right? That's what makes this powerful in crowds, in local crowds. That's why I'm using the example of a protest. But in what other ways are there crowds that gather? Natural disasters? Concerts? In what other places do crowds occur? And in what situations do crowds occur that you might need to be able to send money and information to each other without access to cell phone towers or the internet? And that's when we start talking about why Bitchat is so important. And for all the people that are saying, well, I never have anybody on my Bitchat, why is it that we expect everything to be perfect out of the box? Have we been programmed that way from mass marketing for the last 50 years? My answer to that question is absolutely we have. And it causes real problems in adoption of anything new. Just because you've got Bitchat on your phone and nobody is around you does not make it any less important. If you want to have other people on your Bitchat, then it's up to you to tell people about Bitchat so that your friends will get it on their phone. And then all of a sudden, the network starts to grow. Just saying. Okay, so we're going to switch gears here, and we're going to talk a little bit about gold because something happened yesterday to gold, which is a very interesting situation. We tariffed it. Yes, Trump tariffed gold. Not all gold, specifically like 1 kilogram bars, but I got this piece from the Financial Times here. It's written by Leslie Hook. Headline, U.S. hits 1 kilo gold bars with tariffs in blow to refining hub in Switzerland. The U.S. has slapped tariffs on imports of 1 kilo gold bars in a move that threatens to upend the global bullion market and deal a fresh blow to Switzerland, the world's largest refining hub. The Customs Border Protection Agency said now that 1 kilo and 100-ounce gold bars should be classified under a custom code subject to levies according to a so-called ruling letter dated July the 31st, which was seen by the Financial Times. Ruling letters are used by the U.S. to clarify its trade policy. Now, the CBP's decision stands in sharp contrast with the industry's previous expectations that these types of gold bars should be classified using a different customs code that is exempt from Trump's countrywide tariffs. 1 kilo bars are the most common form traded on COMEX, the world's largest gold futures market, and comprises the bulk of Switzerland's bullion exports to the United States. Relations between Washington and Bern have deteriorated after the U.S. last week announced a 39% tariff on imports from the country. Gold is one of Switzerland's biggest exports to the United States, according to customs data. The tariff ruling dealt another blow to the Swiss gold trade with the U.S., said Christopher Wild, president of the Swiss Association of Manufacturers and Traders of Precious Metals. Wild added that the gold tariff would make it difficult to meet its demand for the yellow metal. Oh, because everybody wants their yellow metal rocks. Anyway, earlier this year, traders rushed to bring gold into the U.S. ahead of Trump's Liberation Day tariffs, building up a record stockpile on COMEX and leading to a temporary shortage of gold in London. However, when those tariffs were announced, they included exemptions for many commodities, including a certain classification of bullion, which was widely interpreted to cover large gold bars. The global trade flow for bullion is normally triangular. Large gold bars travel between London and New York via Switzerland, where they are recast into different sized bars. The two markets use different sized bars, with London using a 400 troy ounce bar, which is about the size of a brick, while the kilo bar, roughly the size of a smartphone, is preferred in New York. Bullion has been on a historic rally this year, rising 27%. since the end of 2024 and briefly touching $3,500 per troy ounce. Fears over inflation, concerns over government debt levels, and the decline of the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency have all contributed to gold's surge. Switzerland exported $61.5 billion of gold to the U.S. over the 12 months ending in June. That same volume would now be subject to an additional $24 billion in tariffs under Switzerland's 39% tariff rate, which went into effect on Thursday. That was just yesterday. And the prevailing view was that precious metals remelted by Swiss refineries and exported to the U.S. could be shipped tariff-free, said Wild. However, the custom code classification for different gold products is not always precise. Several Swiss gold refineries said that they had spent months with lawyers to determine what types of gold products might be exempt or not. Two refineries told the Financial Times that they had temporarily reduced or halted shipments of gold to the U.S. as a result of that uncertainty. The ruling letter, which was a response to a formal request for clarification from a Swiss refinery, said 1 kilo and 100-ounce bars fell under the classification code 7108.13.5500 and stated that they did not fall under a different code number, which is the only code exempt from duties. So we've effectively tariffed gold as of yesterday. And since most of the gold is refined in Switzerland and Switzerland has damn near a 40% tariff, it's going to be much more expensive for people in the United States to buy gold, especially if that gold comes directly from Switzerland, but the entire gold market is clearly being effective because at $3,500 an ounce, gold has now hit an all-time high. It's fallen since then, but it's going to be interesting because one of the things that I'm thinking about at this point is what happens. We've got, as far as we're being told, we've got a lot of gold in Fort Knox. I don't know if I believe that. I think I actually side with the fact that the theory that Fort Knox is essentially empty. That said, what if it's not? Right? So what we've been told is that we have billions of ounces of gold, and it's all valued by the United States at roughly $42 an ounce. I think it's $42.22, I think. I'm not sure, but it's around there. What happens? Because we had news yesterday that there was the possibility that Trump and some other people in the administration were thinking about selling gold, using the profits to buy Bitcoin. Now, we've had that smoke blown up our ass for weeks and weeks and months. I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying, just think about it for a sec. It's sort of like that South Park meme where 1, steal underpants, 2, question mark, 3, profit. You know, what if it's like this? 1, tariff the ever-living shit out of gold from the place where most of the gold is actually refined, Switzerland. Wait for the price to rocket to $3,500 an ounce and beyond. 3, revalue all the gold in the United States coffers from $42 an ounce to whatever the spot price is. Sell all the profit that you make off of that and shove it into Bitcoin. There are some serious problematics with that particular logic, I will admit, but it does make me wonder if this might not be a play to start setting the stage to revalue gold at $42 an ounce to maybe something closer to the spot price. Will it happen? Hell, ladies and gentlemen, I have no idea. It just seems very odd that the United States is actually going through with a 39% tariff on Switzerland and not exempting gold. It's odd. And it had an immediate effect yesterday and early on into the morning hours when gold spiked to $3,500 an ounce. I don't know. But if you want a different kind of gold, the kind of gold that tastes really, really good because you can actually eat it, you need to go visit my friend Oshi at oshigood.us. That's oshigood.us. Once again, oshigood.us, and get yourself some hodl butter. Currently, the man is out of stock. Why? Because his hodl butter is really good. Why? Well, what's it made out of? Well, it's made out of pecans, maple sugar, sea salt flakes, cinnamon, and black pepper. Now, his jars are coming right now at about 8.3 ounces of hodl butter. He is thinking about jacking it up to 16 ounces a jar, but we have yet to be seen. But he's getting enough orders at this point that he might do that. And we've seen that because, as I said, he's out of stock of his hodl butter, his maple syrup hodl butter, and he's out of stock of all kinds of stuff. Why? Because it's all tasty. Man, his hodl bars are freaking awesome, especially the banana chocolate chip hodl bar. He's also got a mint cookie hodl bar, but he's out of stock on pretty much all of this stuff at the moment. And it's because people are buying it hand over fist. And hopefully I'm having something to do with that, because he is the featured vendor of the Circle P. Circle P is open for business. Circle P is where I bring plebs with goods and services for sale to you, other plebs who might actually want to support their fellow plebs and buy from them instead of going and getting some kind of crappy Skippy peanut butter down at the supermarket so that you can support, I don't know, Lever or Lever products or whoever makes soap and foodstuffs. I know it's bizarre. If you were to actually look at the product list of Lever Corporation, you'd be astounded as to how much they sell that is not cleaning products, because that's how they started. That's not what oshigood.us does. It's pleb made. It's built for plebs. It's built by plebs. It's honestly, if the hodl butter is anything like his hodl bars, dude, you're going to want to get some. And make sure you use the code Bitcoin. And why? Well, because it tells Oshi that I made a sale for him. And if he knows that, then in a value for value proposition, this is value for value advertising. If he finds value in the sale that I made for him, then Oshi gets to determine how much he pays me for the advertisement. I do not charge upfront for people advertising, and I also don't charge for people that I don't believe in or products that I don't believe in. I believe in Oshi. You should too. Now, on to meme coins. Yes. but in a Friday fun kind of way. Cointelegraph, Braden Lindria has this headline: 2 arrested after sex toys thrown at WNBA games in meme coin prank. So if you've been wondering where the whole dildo memes have been coming from, it's clearly connected to women's basketball. Honestly, guys, come on. I mean, I don't like WNBA either, but I'm not going to go to buy a ticket to their game so I can throw a dildo at them. That's just juvenile. But these 2 guys have reportedly been arrested for allegedly throwing sex toys during Women's National Basketball Association games, a controversial prank for which a meme coin group has taken responsibility. 5 incidents of sex toys, mainly green in color, being thrown onto the court during WNBA matches have occurred in the past 2 weeks. Speaking to USA Today on Thursday, a spokesperson for the group behind the recently launched green dildo coin, yes, and the ticker symbol is literally dildo, who goes by Daldo Rain, oh, for God's sakes, Daldo Rain on X, said he and other crypto enthusiasts were behind the stunts, which have drawn criticism from WNBA players and coaches as the already polarizing and niche meme coin culture looks to make their bets stand out by any means in a crowded market that struggled to maintain steam. Daldo Rain, Jesus, said that the token was created as a light-hearted protest against what he described as a toxic environment dominated by influencers and scammers within the meme coin space. Pausing to just ask a small question. So your solution was to throw green dildos at women playing sports in public? That really? That was your solution because you're angry that your meme coin sucks ass? Okay, well, quote, we knew that in order to get a voice in the space, we had to go out and do some viral stunts to save us from having to pay that influencer cabal. We want to shift the culture in crypto, and we want to be the 1,000 against the one. Oh, it's David versus Goliath with a dildo. Okay, to make the project stand out, he said the dildos were green as an homage to crypto slang for upward price action on trading charts, while also being an attempt to spark curiosity from onlookers. He suggested the meme coin group would pivot towards lighter and more tasteful pranks to continue gaining attention. Two men, Caden Lopez and Delbert Carver, have been arrested for allegedly taking part in the sex toy throwing stunts, though Daldo Rain told USA that neither was part of the meme coin group. Fox 10 of Phoenix reported on Wednesday, citing court documents, that 18-year-old Lopez told police that he saw the viral trend on social media and purchased a sex toy to participate. USA Today reported that Carver was arrested in Georgia on Saturday, with authorities accusing him of throwing a sex toy onto a basketball court in Atlanta. He reportedly faces charges related to disorderly conduct, public indecency, and criminal trespass. The stunts have drawn, of course, sharp criticism from WNBA players and coaches who said the stunts pose a safety risk and show a lack of respect for the game. Quote, it's ridiculous, it's dumb, it's stupid, Los Angeles Sparks coach Lynn Roberts said after an incident at the Crypto.com arena on Tuesday. According to the WNBA's Code of Conduct page, any fan caught throwing objects onto the court is to be tossed from the stadium and may face possible criminal charges. Daldo Rain reportedly shrugged off suggestions that the stunt was meant as a sign of disrespect towards the women athletes, though others said the stunt has misogynistic roots. Similar pranks have cropped up in other sports, including a 2018 National Football League game between the Patriots and the Bills when a sex toy landed in the end zone. The meme coin market is currently at a market cap of $70.6 billion. And I don't know why they're going to technical analysis at the end of this, but whatever. Stop throwing dildos at women. I don't know why I have to tell people this. It's juvenile AF, right? It is an embarrassment. And the only thing that I can hope from this entire debacle is the fact that people see meme coins for what they really are. Absolutely stupid. Let's run the numbers. Futures and commodities, oil peaking its head back up above $64 a barrel after a quarter-point move. That's for West Texas Intermediate. Brent North Sea is up almost a half point to 66.73. Natural gas is down 2 points, hovering right at $3 per thousand cubic feet, and gasoline is up a half to $2.08 a gallon. Meanwhile, shiny metal rocks, as reported, gold is doing well. 1.14% to the upside. It is chilling out just below $3,500 an ounce. Silver is up a half. Platinum is down 1. Copper is up 1.5, and palladium is down 2.5. In ag, mostly in the green, biggest winner is coffee, 3 points to the upside. Biggest loser today looks to be chocolate, 0.5% to the downside. Meanwhile, live cattle taking a big dip, 2.31% to the downside. Lean hogs down a half, and feeder cattle are down 2.5. Dow is up 0.14%. S&P is up almost a half. NASDAQ is up over a half, and the S&P Mini is treading water slightly in the red. And now to Bitcoin, which is at $116,120. That is a $2.31 trillion market cap. You can get only 34.2 ounces of shiny metal rocks with your one Bitcoin, of which there are 19,903,513 and 1/3 of. Average fees per block are low, 0.03 BTC, taken at fees on a per block basis. There look to be about 25 blocks carrying 105,000 unconfirmed transactions, hoping to clear at 3 Satoshis per VByte, both in high priority and low priority. So it's threes across the board. And mining is holding at 964 exahashes per second. No gains, no losses there. From Rootin' Tootin' Rant, yesterday's episode of Bitcoin, and I've got Chef Tommy. I think this is the first time Chef Tommy has actually commented on one of my episodes. Howdy, Chef. And he says, Chef, this is 800 sats, by the way. Chef, this was a great episode. I really enjoyed your Rootin' Tootin' Rant, which was needed. Thanks for your insight and keep up the cooking. Nourishing yourself and family is worth its weight in sats. Eat some hatch chilies for me. Signed, Chef Tommy. If I can find some hatch red chilies up here, I will. They had them last summer, or at least they said they were hatch. I don't know. The only real place to get hatch red chili is in New Mexico. That and southwestern Colorado. Excellent chilies. There's green chilies and then there's hatch green chilies. And if you don't know the difference, then you've never tried side-by-side comparisons. I don't need to anymore. I just know if something is a hatch green chili or not. Anyway, Progressively Worse 500 says, here's a boost with your name all over it. I hope your Friday is great, but may your weekend be even better. You know what? I might actually cook some ribs. Who knows? User 42752445 with 511 says, hello, fellow boosters. Permanerd with 210 says, sigh. No, hold on. I got to do this right. Sigh. Duck. God's Death 237 says, thank you, sir. No, thank you. Turkey 500 says, nothing. Psyduck with 742 says, Psyduck. That's the weather report. Welcome to part 2 of the news that you can use. Ben Justman is also a Circle P vendor like Oshi, like Soap Miner. Leathermint is sort of out of the picture right now simply because Leathermint is taking a break from making leather goods and whatnot. But Ben is the owner of Peony Lane Wines, which is out of Peony Lane Vineyards. No, he's not. This is not a Circle P segment. He's got a note here that sort of made me start to think about something that I always think about. And generally speaking, one of my overriding questions is, what is wealth? I mean, what is it really? Is it cars? Is it a massive house? Is it 100,000 acres of land? Is it a building in Manhattan? Is it gobs and gobs of money in your bank account? Everybody seems to have a different view of what real wealth is. And Ben has this note here on Nostr. And if you're not on Nostr, ask yourself your question, why? It says, it frustrates me to no end that my dad doesn't understand Bitcoin, but he sure did know how to establish a legacy. He worked his ass off to buy the land and plant the grapes that I am building on top of. I would have little if not for him. My goal is to create something on top of what he started that will inspire my children to take it even further. He won with real estate. I am going to win with Bitcoin. But the generational wealth is found in the land and the memories created while stewarding and enjoying it. All right, so maybe that doesn't mean much to you, like right up front. Maybe you're kind of like going, well, okay, yeah, he won with real estate, and okay, I get it. I think what I'm trying to say is, starting with the destruction of multi-generational households, which was pretty much done in the, like, after we came out of the Depression era, in at least in the United States. I can't speak for any other country, but at least in the United States, coming out of the Great Depression in the 30s, what you saw was a massive exodus of rural folk into the cities because, quote unquote, that's where the jobs were. And we still labor under this lie today. Now, at the time, wasn't a lie. Dust Bowl was ravaging everything. Farms were failing because they simply couldn't grow anything. But before the Great Depression, out in the countryside, where the majority of the population of the United States lived at the time, and yes, that is a fact. The majority of the population of the United States pre-Great Depression were rural, and they were, generally speaking, agriculturally involved, right? You had multi-generational households. And that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's living in one house. It just meant that the kids might be on the same piece of land and the son built his own house and got his own wife and had their own kids. But they were part of the same agricultural endeavor. Still working with their dad. And then the kids grew up a little bit, got to the point where they could take care of animals and whatnot. And you've got 3, maybe 4 generations living on the same piece of land, or at least working the same piece of land, and are very, very close together so that they can each help take care of each other, like babysitting duties. And when you get old, the people will help take care of you as you pass on into the next life. We don't have any. What we replace that shit with is daycare and old folks' homes. There's no legacy. It doesn't fucking exist. We've destroyed it. And now they're going after the nuclear family, and people think that that's a problem. That is not the problem. Nuclear family destruction, which is, in fact, there is a war on the nuclear family. The father, the wife, and mother, the children. That's a nuclear family. One man, one woman. For the people that, there's a couple of people that are listening to the show that are gay. I'm not just excluding you. I'm just saying that from a traditional standpoint, you got a mother, you got a father, and you've got hopefully 3 kids, 4, 5, but let's 2.3 kids. That's sort of what's going on, right? You got 2.3 kids. Don't worry about the third of a kid. It's just statistics. In either event, that's the nuclear family, and it's being destroyed. We saw it, like the African American communities in urban centers were really, really smacked around. You got a lot of single mothers raising 1, 2 kids. Father's not in the picture. It has done nothing but damage. But it's not just African Americans. Honestly, it's like everybody. It's like they don't want the nuclear family around. Who are they? People that want to control you. I mean, at this point, do you really need to ask who they are? Well, you know who they are. They are all the people that are not you, that don't like you, that control the money. And they sure as shit want to control you. They want to control your access to the internet. They want to control your access to your bank. They want to control access to food. They want to control access to the kinds of food that you eat if you do get access to food. That's the they. CEO of Lever Corporation, in conjunction with the Trump administration, in conjunction with the Biden administration, in conjunction with the assholes that run Europe. That's the they. So let's stop asking when somebody says they, that's who you should be thinking of. And so they want the rest of the nuclear family completely blown apart. But that's not the problem. That is simply a mop-up operation of what the destruction actually was. The destruction of multi-generational households that did not live in cities. That was the absolute death knell to legacy, at least in the United States. And that's why Ben's words here hit me so hard. He's building on the legacy that his father built. Now, think of yourself. Think about what it is that you do for a living, right? Is what you do for a living a legacy that's being built? And it doesn't matter if it's not. I'm not saying that you suck because maybe you have an office job and there's no way that an office, unless it's your office that you built, that's different. But if you're working for like a university, you're not really building a legacy, but that's okay. We all got tricked. Like before we were born, we were lied to. You have to go somewhere else to get the job. And entrepreneurship's too damn hard, so don't do that. Even my dad was like, "Oh, you might." He's like, "I work for myself, and it's just too damn hard. Just go work for somebody else." My dad actually said that shit to me. He got suckered into it. We all got suckered into not building legacy. But how would you build a legacy on an office job? If I own a cleaners, do I really expect my kid to get excited about being a cleaner? Well, I don't know, but what I think is that there's something about land. There's something about the agricultural endeavor that speaks to the human heart that makes it much, much easier for legacies to be passed down, like Ben's dad passing down the legacy he built to Ben, and Ben planning on passing it down to his kids. What will his kids be able to build on top of what Ben builds, on top of what he's built on what his father built? What if Ben's father had been building on what the grandfather built, which is not the case, but how many generations down can we go? And when we pass these legacies on, how deep can we dig the well of wealth? Because the wealth in this particular case is the land, but it's also the vines that are being planted on the land. It's going to be the knowledge that is passed down to be able to continuously make a profit. Even if you're not buying Lambos and 50,000 jet airplanes or whatever it is that we think wealth is, that we've been told by what I said yesterday, Robin Leach in that bullshit hour-long program rubbing your face into how you were poor and how you sucked, right? There was no ever any mention of wealth being a farmer, of wealth. And I'm not talking a commodity farmer either, guys. I'm not talking about just like farming 1,000 acres of wheat. I'm talking about the way farms used to be. Animals, multiple different kinds of plants, things you grew that were actually food, right? In this case, it's fine wine from Peony Lane Wine. But the wealth isn't in the resale value of the land, which is probably worth quite a bit. In monetary fiat terms, it is. Is that actual wealth? Is it the excitement, or is wealth rather the excitement of the future that Ben has for getting his kids to take over his position? And you'll ask, what if the kids don't want to make wine? I don't know. I can't answer that particular question. But one thing that I do know is that if we continuously strip off our family members, our next generations, from the previous generation and from the generation that stands right now, sends them out into the void in some other far-flung place geographically, well, then legacy has no hope. And if legacy has no hope, then what hope have we? So, Ben, I appreciate you bringing this to light. Hope you got something out of that one. But we're going to move on. Jack Dorsey back in the news. This isn't about Bitchat, though. Jack Dorsey's block has added 108 Bitcoin in the second quarter and actually has a higher revenue and profit, as opposed to a lot of Bitcoin treasury companies, which are zombie companies that just hold Bitcoin as a Hail Mary for survivability. Block is actually making money and holding Bitcoin. So this is out of Decrypt. Jack Dorsey's Block Incorporated continued its Bitcoin acquisition, adding 108 BTC, bringing its holdings to 8,692 Bitcoin. The company reported total revenues of $6 billion in the second quarter, which is a 1.5% rise from the $5.96 billion in the first quarter, while gross profit rose 8.2% to $2.5 billion, which is up from $2.3 billion, according to the company's latest 10Q form. Of the total revenue, $2.14 billion came from Bitcoin sales via Cash App, generating a gross profit of $66 million from the world's largest cryptocurrency. The Bitcoin purchase, which has a cost basis of $11 million, continues the company's steady accumulation strategy and brings the total Bitcoin investment to $1.15 billion at current market prices that are nearing $117,000. Block recognized a $212.2 million gain from the remeasurement of its Bitcoin investment during the quarter, compared to a $70.1 million loss in the same period last year, according to the filing. The second quarter purchase continues the pattern of steady Bitcoin buying that has characterized Block's approach under current CEO Jack Dorsey. Quote, while MicroStrategy's strategy is a high conviction model for a Bitcoin first company, Block's measured approach is a far more sustainable and realistic blueprint for mainstream corporate adoption, Charmaine Tam, head of OTC trading at Hex Trust, told Decrypt. The company has accumulated approximately 207 BTC in the first quarter, with a combined cost basis of $20.6 million for both quarters. Block has integrated crypto across multiple business lines, including plans to enable Bitcoin payments through its Square merchant network and development of Bitcoin mining hardware through its Proto division, which this is the first I've heard of Proto. Tam said that Block's incremental accumulation alongside its operational business demonstrates, quote, how a company can prudently integrate the asset into its treasury without taking on the same level of capital risk. Block shares jumped 6% in after-hours trading following the report's release. Quote, while treasury adoption is a valuable first step, creating tangible utility through real-world products is the most powerful and sustainable driver of long-term success for the ecosystem, Tam added. I cannot agree more. If you're not pulling in revenue, it really doesn't matter how much Bitcoin you hold as a treasury company. You have to have income that is over and well above an increase in price on Bitcoin. It doesn't mean that it's dumb to have a Bitcoin treasury. I just think that it's dumb to only have a Bitcoin treasury. You need products, you need service, you need revenue, and it needs to come from those products and services. It's just, I don't know why this is such a difficult concept, but Larry Lepard probably knows. And Larry Lepard, on episode number 556 of Once Bitten, a Bitcoin podcast, well, that's what this is. This is about Once Bitten, a Bitcoin podcast. This Daniel Prince's podcast, his last one is interviewing Larry Lepard. I think it's Lepard, not Leopard, but Lepard. And he says that, let's see, what young memories shaped Larry's thoughts and attitudes towards money? Why couldn't Larry hold back his emotions at a high net worth gathering event with ex-central bankers and Wall Street executives on stage giving a speech? What made him fall into the Bitcoin rabbit hole, and how have his peers treated him since? So if you want those questions answered, you're going to need to go to Once Bitten, a Bitcoin podcast. I promise I will have the URL directly to this episode in today's show notes. So go listen to Daniel Prince of Once Bitten interview Larry Lepard. Again, Once Bitten is more about interviews. I do the news. This is the product that I bring you so that you can figure out what the hell happened in Bitcoin today. But if you want to hear an interview with Larry Lepard, you need to go over to Once Bitten and check out Daniel Prince. Now, Binance is working with banking giant BBVA to enable its customers to hold assets off exchange. This is the block written by James Hunt. Now, if you remember, I brought you news a few weeks back about Spain's bank, BBVA. It's a huge bank. And now they're teaming up with Binance who is working with BBVA to allow customers to hold their assets off exchange, according to the Financial Times. Spanish and Latin American bank BBVA has recently taken on a role as one of the very few independent custodians for clients of the world's largest crypto exchange, the Financial Times reported on Friday. The move is reportedly designed to help reassure investors following Binance's record $4 billion fine by U.S. authorities in November 2023 for failing to prevent alleged money laundering, fraud, and sanctions violations. Crypto traders have been seeking to mitigate the risk of holding assets on crypto trading platforms in general following the FTX debacle in 2022, which left billions of dollars trapped in bankruptcy proceedings. The BBVA custody setup keeps traders' funds in U.S. treasuries. Oh, yes. Let's bolster the United States bond market, shall we? At the bank, which Binance then accepts as trading margin, one of the people said, adding that the arrangement helps mitigate a hypothetical FTX 2.0 situation. It creates a barrier between trading and custody that is standard practice in traditional finance to reduce counterparty risk. The collaboration may also signal a growing readiness among traditional lenders to strengthen ties with the crypto sector, boosted by the Trump administration's strong backing of the industry. One source said the Spanish bank carries greater name recognition than Binance's current partners. If you say BBVA, people are like, box tick, next. The person added, and this is, I guess, somebody familiar with the situation, referring to the due diligence process when deciding whether to use an exchange. In January of 2024, Binance began letting its larger clients hold their assets at independent custodians like Signum and Flowbank, to cut counterparty risk. Binance traders had previously been restricted to keeping their assets on the exchange or via Binance's custody partner, Sifu, which the Securities and Exchange Commission described as a rebranded Binance entity. BBVA has been expanding its crypto activity in recent months, announcing the rollout of Bitcoin and shitcoin number one trading and custody services in July, and the bank has also advised its wealth clients to invest 3 to 7% of their portfolios in cryptocurrencies. Wow, not bad. Not bad. There's a couple of more things about it, but I don't need to get into it, because what I'm wondering, so here's what's really going on. We always say, get your coins off the exchange. Now, it's going to be a little bit more murkier, because there's two things about keeping your coins on the exchange. One, it's a signal to the market. If people are looking at Binance's wallets, like let's say Arkham Intelligence, and seeing a vast inflow of Bitcoin into those wallets, all of a sudden you get news stories by shitty outlets that say, oh my God, Bitcoin's going to die because all this Bitcoin's moving to exchanges, which means that it clearly is immediately going to be sold, which is not actually the case. But it doesn't matter. As long as you can generate FUD to cause fear and get people to sell their Bitcoin, you can pick up Bitcoin at a discount. That's what that shit's all about. But now it's going to be different, isn't it? You're not going to be holding, and this is going to be a trend. See, because Binance is, instead of holding the coins themselves, they're going to allow BBVA to hold it. And I guess there's going to be some kind of conversion of that shit into US treasuries. It doesn't really matter. Instead of going directly to FTX, we're going to start seeing a shift to where coins, instead of going to exchanges, are going to go to custodians that those exchanges are working with. So how will that change the landscape of FUD? Will we see news stories like Binance BBVA custodian sees massive inflow of Bitcoin, therefore Bitcoin's going to die, everybody's going to sell their Bitcoin. But those numbers are going to be larger because BBVA is going to have a lot more customers that are not exchanges. So the FUD has the potential to be ramped up. So we really got to watch for this and see which way this is going. I predict that every single cryptocurrency exchange will have a high power, highly recognized name bank be their custodians. and we're going to see a new format of FUD when it comes to, oh, we're seeing an inflow of Bitcoin into this entity, so therefore Bitcoin's going to die. I honestly, it's all so tiresome. And so is Ukraine, whose central bank opens up to cryptocurrency, but not as a medium of exchange, according to Atlas21.com. The governor of the National Bank of Ukraine, Andriy, whatever his name is, recently clarified the central bank's stance on the regulation of digital assets. In an interview with RBC Ukraine, the monetary chief drew a clear line between legalization and use as a means of payment. According to his statements, Bitcoin and other digital assets can never replace the national currency as legal tender. Quote, "It is essential that our non-negotiable boundaries are clearly respected. Virtual assets cannot be a means of payment, cannot in any way undermine the effectiveness of our monetary instruments." End quote. Sounds like he's a little scared. Ukraine's approach aims to prevent any transfer of monetary authority or weakening of the central bank's regulatory tools. And moreover, according to the Gov, the legislation of cryptocurrencies in Ukraine must comply with, of course, international FATF standards, the FATF, and relevant European regulations, ensuring the effectiveness of national finance monitoring. Pashivny stressed the importance of bringing greater transparency to the digital asset market. And alongside the regulation of digital assets, the National Bank of Ukraine is testing architectural models for a potential central bank digital currency, the e-hryvnia, or however you pronounce that. It looks like Hyman to me, but pilot project is progressing in collaboration with selected technology partners, and the governor explained, quote, "We want this pilot to give us as much information as possible to decide on a large-scale issue. At the same time, we are looking very closely at how the CBDC process is developing in other central banks." End quote. The NBU is actively cooperating with the European Central Bank, the Bundesbank, the National Bank of Belgium, and the Bank of France, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, as well, to develop its digital ecosystem. Special attention is being given to the Digital Euro project. Talk about putting your eggs in the wrong basket. It's considered a strategic move for Ukraine's monetary future. For God's sakes, the digital euro it's dead. They just don't know it yet. Whatever. Last June, Ukrainian lawmakers proposed a bill that could allow the NBU to include Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies in the country's national reserves. So this entire story is all about Ukraine basically blocking any potential use of Bitcoin or any digital currency other than those fully sanctioned by they. And I mean the they that I've been talking about. They are fully controlled by the they. If you don't believe me, I just don't have time to explain it to you. Just a final parting shot here. Indonesia is considering Bitcoin mining as well as building a BTC reserve. Just a few here. Indonesia is considering adding Bitcoin to its national reserves. And recently, Bitcoin Indonesia, the country's largest Bitcoin advocacy group, met with top officials from the vice president's office, including representatives of Vice President Gibran, to present a detailed proposal on how Bitcoin could support Indonesia's long-term economic goals. Quote, "We were invited to the Vice President's office to present how Bitcoin could benefit the country," Bitcoin Indonesia wrote on X. "We explored a bold idea, using Bitcoin mining as a national reserve strategy." Now, will Indonesia do it? There's no way to know. It depends on how polluted Indonesia's government's minds are by the they. How strapped into Europe and the FATF and the IMF and the World Bank is your country, because that determines how willingly your government is actually going to, adopt any kind of Bitcoin measures whatsoever. But it's Friday. We got better fish to fry. Might have to do a couple of racks of ribs this weekend. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think I'm going to have to definitely do that. I hope you figure out something that you can cook as well. If you do, make sure that you tag Chef Tommy in Nostr notes and take a picture of every meal you make. Inundate Chef Tommy. If you're not following Chef Tommy on Nostr, you got to, because he actually he's pretty, as far as I can tell, pro chef, very good at it, understands food, understands cooking, understands wine. He's a good follow, and he always, every single time I put up a picture of something that I've cooked, he will chime in on it. So, and he also makes some comments that I can include in future cooking endeavors. So follow Chef Tommy and post all of your meals this weekend, to make sure you tag Chef Tommy in it, and I will see you on the other side. This has been Bitcoin and I'm your host, David Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and hope to see you again real soon. Have a great day.